So I recently talked about the OnePlus 7 Pro and whether or not it'd be good to use in 2020. I figured I would do the same for an Apple phone. The top selling phone of 2019, the iPhone XR. That's right, their budget style iPhone that came out in very late 2018 ended up selling more in 2019 than pretty much any other phone. And I know Samsung Knights get really upset about that, which is kind of funny because I don't put my self-importance in any particular phone. I don't really care who sold the most. Samsung fans, for some reason, do. I don't know why that is. They seem to put their importance, their self-worth into their phone. I don't do that. I have an iPhone now and I have an Android phone tomorrow, and I just happen to be able to use both. The iPhone XR is a great phone. I think most people can use it. But if for some reason this triggers you to find out that this phone sold more than a Samsung phone, then your life sucks. You need to reevaluate things and maybe move out of your mom's basement. Because if this little piece of metal and plastic hurts your feelings, you're not doing life right. But for the rest of you who just want to know about the best-selling phone of 2019, the iPhone XR, I'll tell you all about it right after this.
This is, you listening to Travis.
What up, players? Welcome back. And for all you new people, welcome. My name's Travis and I do tech videos every single week and have a blast doing it. If that sounds like fun to you, sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Anything I talk about will be in the description below. But for now, let's just get into the video. Now, one thing that Apple owners know, and this is pretty clear, is you don't actually have to update all the time. Some Android phones you do. It just depends on the manufacturer. Some of them stop doing updates after about a year or two. And if you want to keep up with the latest update or operating system, you gotta buy a new phone. It's not really the case with iOS. Let's talk a little bit about what makes a phone like this work so well for so long. One thing that makes Android phones so good is the fact that they're so customizable and you have a lot of options from different manufacturers. You know, one manufacturer like Sony might give you one type of look of phone and Samsung will give you another. It's kind of cool. That's one of the downsides to Apple. When you get an iPhone, you're getting whatever the design is. But typically the design's pretty good. But one thing you don't have to worry about are updates, and that's something that's super strong with a phone like this. With a Samsung, LG, or any of those other Android phones, you've got to worry about Google coming out with their update, then the manufacturer, and then your phone provider. There's no getting around that. That just sucks. It's terrible. It's a bad experience. But with Apple phones, as soon as the update comes out from Apple, all phones can get it no matter what carrier you're on, and you can get it at the same time. Thus, this phone, the iPhone XR from 2018, has the greatest and latest update from Apple, much the same as their 11 Pro, 11 Pro Max, and of course later this year, the 12. It's going to have the same exact update at the same exact time. If Android could get along with that, that'd be great. If they could just move that forward. I don't know why that's taken this long and they still haven't done it to get all your phones updated at the same time. And people don't understand how great that is until they experienced it with an iPhone. Now, because of the updates, you can get all different types of features that you didn't get when you first bought this phone, and updates to the camera quality, which does happen over time. The camera on this, of course, is only one camera on the iPhone XR, is good. It's not bad at all, and it can shoot up to 4K 60 frames a second. That's freaking nuts. And the A12 processor that's built into this thing is a beast. I have an iPad Pro, which is the A12X processor, slightly more powerful than this, and it can just rip through 4K footage like it's nothing. As a matter of fact, the current generation iPad, which uses the A10, that's right, 2 generations before this, can edit 6K footage. 6K footage. You're going to have a real hard time doing that on much of any type of processor, let alone a mobile processor. So the A12 inside of this XR is going to last you a long time. And currently at iOS 13, we're seeing support all the way back to the iPhone 6S. That's like 5 years ago. So if you're going to get the next 3 to 4 to 5 years of updates on this thing is good to go for a long time. And the processing power in this thing is just going to continue to be well used. Now, as far as RAM, no iPhone has a bunch of RAM, but it doesn't need it. And that's kind of the funny thing with Android. Android continues to raise the bar on how much RAM a phone can have and never really need it. You're paying for something you're not really using. iOS uses the RAM efficiently, and it uses it accordingly. It doesn't need 12 gigs of RAM to run well. Matter of fact, none of the iPhones that are out as of this recording have even 8 gigs of RAM. Think about that for a second. They're shooting 4K 60 frames a second video, editing that video, playing games, doing all types of stuff. And they don't even have 12 gigs of RAM or 8 gigs of RAM or anything like that. It's kind of crazy. So when you see the performance on an iPhone XR, even a year and a half after it's come out. And the fact that it has not slowed down, even a little bit, is a testament not only to the processor, but the operating system itself. Everything opens snappy, fast, quick. The one thing I will say about having a phone like the XR, it makes you wonder, why would you spend more money on something like the 11 Pro or 11 Pro Max? And one of the main reasons you would actually do that is because of things like the display. Now, the display on this thing isn't even quite HD, and it's LCD. In a vacuum, this is a great looking display, and people can sit here and talk about OLED and how much better it is. And while some of that is actually true, the reality is when you're just looking at this, not next to an OLED screen, it looks great. And people can sit there and try to hate all they want, but it's the truth. It looks really good. But because it is LCD, the battery usage is going to be a little bit different than it would be for an OLED panel, which can turn off individual pixels. So your battery life will not be as great as something like an 11 Pro, 11 Pro Max. But again, do you really need that? The processing power in one of these phones is going to be more than enough than for, I don't know, let's say 80 to 90% of the people that buy this for the next 5 years. You're getting an incredible bargain. Look, as of the recording of this video, this phone new from Apple is $600. For a phone whose processor is actually faster than most other mobile processors out there, that says a lot. Plus, you get a really nice, just slightly better than 720p screen, which most people are going to give hate on. But again, in a vacuum, it looks fine. The color reproduction on this thing is absolutely incredible. Looks great. And Apple takes their time to make sure the colors are replicated perfectly on this phone. The iPhone XR was more successful than Apple probably ever thought it would be, and certainly more successful than a lot of tech people thought it would be. So much so that the next version of this became the iPhone 11. They didn't put any type of designation afterwards. It was just the base model iPhone. This phone was not for the pixel peepers. This phone was not for the people that watch videos like this. This was for the mass market, and it succeeded. It succeeded very well. And now that the iPhone 11 is basically the iPhone XR to the next level, we should continue to see this moving forward. And what started out as an experiment is now the base model for all iPhones. It's actually kind of crazy if you think about it. Apple went and looked at what people really want and really need, and at a price they're willing to pay, and then dropped the price of the iPhone 11. It's pretty interesting. It seems like they kept raising the price year after year and watch all the other Android manufacturers kind of go up with it and then drop the floor out from underneath of them with a cheaper version of the iPhone, and succeeded. Best-selling phone. So who is this for? It's for pretty much anyone who needs a phone that's going to work all the time, they can rely on, has a great battery life, gets me through the entire day super easily, wants to do social media, wants to do iMessage, wants to do AirDrop, and maybe they don't even know that they would like those things. But the iPhone XR is absolutely a phone you can buy and rock with in all of 2020, 2021, and for another couple more years. And while this iPhone isn't for the tech heads, you know, the people out there looking for the latest and greatest, this phone will absolutely do the job for just about every single other person. Literally, look at the people around you. Look at the people at your job. What kind of phones do they have? You're going to find a lot of people with phones spec'd much lower than this. And if you look on Amazon, you can even find this for under $500. It says a lot that Apple finally has a phone that's in a budget price that performs like a flagship. And isn't that what's important? This thing does 90% of what every single person needs. What more could you ask for? The 6.1-inch display on this thing is plenty big enough. It's thin and light, which is super nice. And the speakers on this phone are really loud. Like, you can hear this phone from another room away. That's one of the things that blows me away about the speakers on iPhones in general, but the XR especially. It's super loud. But obviously, let's talk about the things that really lock you into Apple if you're a part of the Apple ecosystem. iOS is smooth as butter, and let me tell you something, things like AirDrop and iMessage make you never want to leave. Now granted, AirDrop really only comes into play if you have other Apple products, or if your friends happen to have iPhones as well, which, you know, if you put the numbers out there, they probably at least a couple of them do. And in that case, dropping pictures and videos in full resolution, by the way, is super easy. If you have an iPad like I do, maybe you shoot some footage on your iPhone and want to get it over to your iPad maybe to edit, or if you have a MacBook or something like that, AirDrop is the savior. And of course, iMessage is awesome with all the different cool things you can do on it. And while RCS is finally hitting Android and is kind of a competitor to it, iMessage has figured this out years ago and is an incredible, incredible addition. And I love how I can use it between any of my devices, whether it be an iPad or an iPhone. I don't need to connect anything. It's just part of the entire ecosystem. As long as I'm signed in, I get it. And looking at the pictures this thing takes, let me tell you, I'm constantly amazed at what this phone can do with one single camera. Even portrait mode is nice, and the video quality is super good. Again, you gotta remember, this phone, when it came out, was only $750, and now is much less than that, around $600, or if you do a trade-in, even less than that. The quality of this phone is what sells people on it. You can rely on it. And in a lot of ways, that's what's super important. Can you rely on your phone to do phone calls, messages, social media, pictures, and the battery life? Will it last you all day? The answer is yes for the iPhone XR. So who is the iPhone XR for? Well, I would say most people, especially people who are interested in getting into the Apple ecosystem but don't want to pay $1,000 for a brand new iPhone 11 Pro or 12 or whatever's out there. A XR is a great place to start. Maybe it doesn't have the best cameras now because of course the 11 series does, but it has a really great camera. You can shoot 4K 60, you can edit it right on the phone, and you can do a bunch of things with your iPhone friends you've never been able to do before. And let me tell you something, I'll admit it, there's some pretty fun things you can do with like emojis and some other ridiculous stuff. And of course, if you know people that aren't very tech-minded, iPhones are great. They're super simple to understand and to set up. And if you're that guy in the family that's doing all the tech support for everybody, something like this is super easy to recommend. Not a lot of headaches with an iPhone, it's pretty simple. Now, if you're into a lot of customizations, iPhones just aren't for you. You can't really change a lot about the actual desktop or anything like that. It's not like an Android phone where you can theme skin it one day and then do it a different way the next day. That's not what this is about. This is about a phone that works all the time, every time, and something you can rely on. It's something that I actually really appreciate about iPhones. Does that make them the best phone out there? I mean, not necessarily, but it did sell a lot, and I love the face unlock on this thing. It's super, super fast, super secure. You can use it for things like bank apps and more. I love the way the integration with the Face app works with certain apps to unlock things. And yeah, sure, I get it. Samsung has some stuff. I love that stuff as well, especially with the fingerprint sensor. But oh man, the speed of unlocking the phone with your face, baby, with your face! At the end of the day, it's easier for me to recommend the iPhone XR for 2020 and beyond. We know, if we just look at the past as any indication of the future, this thing will be supported by software updates for at least the next 3 to 4 years, very likely up to 5. That's an incredible value for $600. You're gonna be very hard pressed to buy a $600 Android phone right now and get support for 5 years of timely updates from your provider. It's just not really gonna happen. And if we talk about gaming, yeah, man, if you got Apple Arcade, you got a bunch of games there. Of course, all the normal arcade games you can get on mobile are all available on the App Store. You can game, you can shoot video, you can take pictures, you can do social media, you can do all the things. It's a smartphone. Don't you know how smartphones work? But for the iPhone XR, it's a super safe bet and a super safe purchase in 2020. It's a good deal right now. You can check out a link in the description below if you want to pick one up. I highly recommend them. If this video helped you out in any way, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. And if it didn't, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell. I'm here every single week having a blast. Hope to see you again real soon. Peace and love, peace and love. Love that XR, baby.